Okay. And we are live. Perfect. So for those of you who are here this evening, for those of you who will be joining soon, for those of you who will be watching the recording, a very good evening. And before we start, a few things. Number one is a word of gratitude to the sponsors who have made tonight's class possible. We wish them good health. We wish them good luck. We wish them lots of nachas from their families. And may this course and the Torah learning be a source of blessing to them and their families. Today's class is also dedicated in loving memory of my nephew who passed away this morning, Menachem Mendel ben David. His neshama should have an aliyah, and Hashem should bring comfort and strength to the entire family.
Amen.
We will start as we usually do with a round of gratitude. Leib Moshe, what are you grateful for in your new home?
I'm grateful for my new home and just the adjusting to the new place. I've got some issues that need to be worked out, but they're being worked on. And I'm grateful for things going the way they are.
Beautiful. Auntie Nina, what are you grateful for this tomorrow morning?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm grateful for having a wonderful family I have, and I'm grateful for having had the chance to say all the that I said for the beautiful sunny day in Hobart.
Beautiful. I am grateful today for Leah, who is already flipping over and getting all over the place. She doesn't sit in one spot anymore. She's giggling and Baruch Hashem, growing very well. And Miriam, if you'd like to unmute yourself and share something that you're grateful for this evening. Okay, so these courses, as usual, just a quick memory booster for the JLI courses. They are meant to be they are designed to be an information overload. And if there's anything that you didn't understand or didn't feel like you got completely, that's okay. And you can always look back at the recordings. So it's okay to feel a little overwhelmed. If you have your book already, great. If your book did not come yet, it should be coming in the next few days. Let me see if this is Joan. No, she should be here. She should be logging in any minute. What else is there? That's pretty much it. Oh, it looks like Joan is trying to call. Let's see if she's having trouble logging in. Hello. How are you? Baruch Hashem. Yeah, we started the meeting. You should have gotten a link in your email. What happens if you click that link that's in your email? It's not highlighted. Okay, so what happens if you go into your browser? Yeah, go into Google and type in chabadgfl.com. That's okay. We're happy to get you on. / live. chabadgfl.com / live. Okay, so do this. Go to Zoom. Go to your Zoom app. And I'll tell you the meeting ID and the password. Eight 8211. That's it. And the passcode is 966. 966-100. Are you in? Okay. Bye. Okie dokie. So Joan will be here. Here's Joan. Okay. Very good. Great to see you, Joan. Glad you were able to make it. So we are going to start today with two stories. Story number one is that there was we may have mentioned this one in one of the other classes, but it's a good story. There's a guy and he is a big anti-Semite, vicious anti-Semite. He loves making fun of Jews and he loves making Jews feel bad about themselves. He's a big shot in town and everybody knows who he is. And one day he's walking past the bar and he sees this Jew standing right inside the bar. And this Jew is looking, he's looking okay. And the anti-Semite decides it's my turn today to make this Jew feel miserable. So he walks inside the bar and he says to the bartender, a round of drinks for everyone except that Jew. Now, you can imagine how a Jew might have felt if the big anti-Semite in town orders drinks for everyone except for him. Well, the bartender is filling up drinks for everyone. And the Jew looks at the anti-Semite and he smiles at him and he says, thank you, sir. Now, there's not much more you can do to aggravate an anti-Semite than that. And so the anti-Semite is now seething at this Jew. And he says to the bartender, another round of drinks for everyone on me, except that Jew. And the bartender starts filling up the drinks for everyone. And the Jew smiles, and his smile is getting even bigger, and he says, thank you. Now, this anti-Semite can't stand it anymore. He can't come to terms with the fact that he is singling out the Jew in front of everyone, and this Jew is just smiling and keeping his cool. So he looks at the bartender, he says, what's wrong with this Meshuggah Jew? And the bartender says, he's not Meshuggah at all. He's the owner.
Good one. Good one.
There's another story after the assassination of Tsar Nikolai III. The next morning, one of the high-ranking officials comes to one of the rabbis in his city, and he walks into the rabbi's office and he pointingly, with an accusatory point of his finger, says, I bet you know what happened to the Tsar and how it happened and who was involved. And the rabbi says, well, actually, I don't know, but I'm quite certain that the Russians are going to blame the Jews and the milkmen. This man says, why the milkmen? And the rabbi says, why the Jews? So this is a very important course because it's a very important topic. From the beginning of history, there are two things that have always been from the beginning of the history of our nation, which is anti-Semitism and jokes about anti-Semitism. All the horrors through all the ages, we've been persecuted, we've been burned, we've been gassed, we've been slaughtered, we've been everything. From the beginning of time through the end of time, the Christians, the Muslims, the Romans, the Greeks, the Syrian Greeks, the Germans, the Spanish, everyone. Throughout the ages, it's something that we've been dealing with. And just when we thought we were at the end of it, when we thought that the world finally is all chanting together, never again, and just 75 years later, we look around And October 27th was 5 days ago, last week, was the third yard site of the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh. We had just last week, we remember what happened with Chabad of Poway. We remember what happened on a campus in Washington, I believe, where a Jewish frat house was broken into and graffitied up, and they poured detergent over the holy books that were there and ripped them up. So just when we thought that we can finally relax, we look around us and we see that anti-Semitism is still here. And the acts are, right, they're around. We see them, we hear them, we feel about them. And you can look at the data, you can look at the statistics, and I don't know exactly how that all works. And if you look in the student book, Joan, the books have arrived, so you'll get yours tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem. So I don't know exactly how everything works with all the statistics, but one thing is for sure is that anti-Semitism is still around. It's still here. And I just pause with a quick question. Have any of you been a direct victim of, well, I don't want to use the word victim, but have any of you experienced firsthand anti-Semitism?
I have.
Looks like Joan as well.
No, I was waving to him.
Oh, you're waving to Leib Moshe. So
Yes.
we all either have experienced or know somebody who has experienced, whether verbal, emotional, physical. And many of you have been wondering about the name anti-Semitism, the name of the course, Outsmarting Antisemitism. What is this about? What does it mean? So the objective is not how to stop anti-Semitism. That's not the objective of this 4-week course. We're not going to think about ways to stop anti-Semitism from happening. What we are going to do is we are going to learn about the psychology of anti-Semitism, the roots of anti-Semitism, why it's here, what it does, what are ways to respond, but most importantly, how do we deal with it in the best, healthiest way? So while we are going to talk about how to speak with people who are anti-Semites, we're going to speak about anti-Israel anti-Semitism, which is very nuanced. We're going to speak about talking with friends and perhaps ideas of persuasion. But the most important part is going to start tonight, which is internally. We're going to think about anti-Semitism. We're going to think about the way we relate to anti-Semitism. There's a saying from Lord Jonathan Sacks, Lord Dr. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Many of you know his name. We've mentioned him before, and we're going to discuss this topic more in the later weeks. But he says that anti-Semitism is like a virus, just keeps mutating. When you think you got a hold of it, it changes forms. So what we're going to be doing starting tonight is boosting our immune system, if you will, that we will be well prepared to fend off and to ward off and to not be affected, to not be debilitated by whatever anti-Semitism the world might throw towards our way. We're not going to speak about getting rid of anti-Semitism. We're going to talk about how we can get stronger. So we're going to talk about where it comes from, but tonight we're going to start by speaking about the psychology of hate and the psychology of bullying. That's where we're going to start tonight's discussion. So I'm going to start with a question. I'm going to ask you, what does a bully want? A bully in school, a bully in the workplace, what does a bully want?
Power,
Power,
to be noticed,
attention,
his way.
he might be looking to get his way. Antonina?
Oh, wait. Yeah, well, I think it's just to make himself feel superior because he feels inferior, really.
Okay. A bully feels less than, and he's trying to make himself feel better, so he pushes other people down to bring himself up.
Yeah.
Leib Moshe, you're surprisingly quiet on this one.
I speak when I have something to say.
Sorry?
I speak when I have something to say.
You speak when you have something to say. Okay. So these are all very good things and all very good points. And one thing that we want to focus on is what Joan said about power. That when the victim is a victim, the bully has power. And the bully wants that the victim should stay a victim and should remain a victim and should view themselves as a victim. And when the victim becomes a victim, the bully has power. The fact that the victim feels like a victim itself gives power to the bully. And this is very much what terrorism is all about. Instilling terror in other people so that you can feel power over them, or that the terrorists can feel power over the others by them living in fear. And the truth is that a lot of what we do today is driven by fear. I mean, I went to the airport on Monday and I had to take off my shoes. Why did I have to take off my shoes? Because there was some crazy guy who tried to light his shoes on fire. We all remember the shoe bomber. 9/11, the whole security, the whole airports. If you've ever flown anywhere recently, you know that there's a lot of things that we do because of a group of terrorists. So what the bully wants is for us to feel like a victim, for us to be afraid. That's the underlying premise that we're going to be discussing. And what I want to do today is start by looking at text number 2. So Leib Moshe has that in front of him. He has his book already. For us who don't yet have our books, I'm going to share this on the screen over here. Give us just a moment. And we're going to have to scroll through over here. All these fancy graphs that you can look at. Lots of things to look at over here. Where are we? Text number, where's text number 2? Here we go. Text number 2. Leib Moshe, would you like to read text number 2 for us?
Question or from the top?
From the top.
It is stated in the book of Ben Sirah, do not allow anxiety into your heart, for anxiety has killed the Almighty.
Has killed the
Killed the mighty, excuse me. You're right.
Thank you.
Big difference. King Solomon said the same. If there is anxiety in your heart, quash it.
Thank you, Leib Moshe. So we see over here from the top one. Now, just a quick interesting point about Ben Sirah. What is the book of Ben Sirah? Many of us are familiar with the 24 books, the holy writings, and have never heard of Ben Sirah. What is this book? So Ben Sirah is, I believe, written in the Second Temple era. Ben Sirah is a book of wisdom written by Jewish people at that time. And it did not make it into the canonization of the Bible, yet there is wisdom found in there, therefore it is quoted. It's part of, I guess, what you would call the Apocrypha, and it is quoted in the Talmud. So this statement over here, that anxiety has killed the mighty. So being scared is not a good thing. King Solomon also says, if you're anxious, remove that anxiety from your heart. Was it FDR said, fear nothing but fear itself?
We have nothing to fear but fear itself.
You have nothing to fear but fear itself. Or there was this interesting story, Joan, I think I mentioned this to you recently. There's a story that there was a big rabbi, and he had an encounter with the angel of death. And the angel of death told him, in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. There will be a plague. And the rabbi said, how many people will die? He says, 5,000 people will die. Okay. 2 weeks later, a plague came and 15,000 people died. So the rabbi went back to find the angel of death, and he said, what's going on over here? You said 5,000 will die, and 15,000 died. And the angel of death responded, 5,000 died from my sword. The other 10,000 died from fear. There's a story of, we all know King Saul. His paranoia of David, it drove him almost to his death. He did things that he would not have done otherwise that ended up causing him to be killed. There's a story that Maimonides, the Rambam, brings about a friend of his that all the details aren't coming to me right now, but there was a guy, he says, who was a brilliant man, but was afraid. And his fear pushed him to the grave, and he ended up actually dying from his fear. I don't know if he committed suicide or what ended up happening. He was just too debilitated by his fear that he was not able to function, and he ended up dying. So the first big idea that we're going to explore in this course, the first big idea that we're going to talk about tonight is fear. How to defeat the opposition. The first thing we have to make sure is that we're not operating from a place of fear. If we are afraid, we are not going to be thinking straight. We're not going to be acting sanely, soundly, and definitely not strategically. So the first thing that we have to do is deal with our fear. If we are afraid, we have to change that. We have to think about how we can change that. And once we're operating from a place of strength, everything changes. Obsessing with anti-Semitism can really hold us back from growth, can really pull us in the wrong direction. I do believe that it's important to be aware of what's going on. We have to know what's going on in the world. We have to know hold your friends close and your enemies even closer. We have to know who our enemy is, and we have to know what's going on with them. But we can't obsess with them. And we can't let it overtake us, and we can't be overly consumed. I'll explain what I mean. Their goal is for us to feel like victims. What we have to do is focus on who we are. Not as the way that they want us to feel, not the way that they want us to see ourselves, but who we actually are, who we really are for ourselves. We can't derive our identity from what our enemies want us to feel about ourselves. I mean, let's look at a child who's being bullied in school, right? So you have this kid, and the bully is bullying them, typical scenario, whatever it is, picking on the bigger kid, picking on the little kid. The insecure bigger kid is picking on the little kid. So there's a few ways to deal with it. Number one is you can call out the bully, and you can have meetings with his parents and threaten to kick him out of school and yada, yada, all on and on and on about the bully, which is important to talk about the bully. But when the parents of the child who is the victim, the child who is being bullied, if they will just choose to only continue with the treatment of the bully and only speak about the bully and the bully and the bully and the bully, then what they are doing is strengthening the victimhood of their child, and they are turning their child into a victim of the bully. And this child will start identifying themselves as a victim of the bully and believe that he is not able to change himself. So what's the better approach for the parent? If your kid was bullied in school, what did you tell them?
Be brave.
You are smart. You are courageous. You are worthwhile. You are beautiful. You are strong. You are capable. You are able. And by reaffirming the child's identity of who he is or who she is, that child can now look up at the world. And when the bully starts saying mean things, the child will have the confidence to know that it's not true what the bully is saying. It's just not true. It's not who I am. It's not what I am. You're a weakling and you can't shoot a hoop, right? Well, that's not true. When I set my mind to something, I know what I can do. So there's two ways of dealing with bullying, and the important thing to remember and the best way to work about it is, instead of focusing on the bully or the weaknesses of the bully, to focus on the victim and the strengths that this victim has, and to build up the victim, that they realize that they are not a victim, that they are their own entity regardless of the bully. So let's look at text number 1A. Auntie Nina, your hand is raised.
I just wanted to add, as long as there's no physical bullying going on.
Yes, thank you. There are many forms of bullying. There are many forms of anti-Semitism. And when it comes to bullying, when there is physical bullying, it takes a different approach and it takes a different route. Thank you for adding that. So we're going to share our screen over here. We're going to share our screen over here. We're going to go back up to text number 1A. Where is this? Text number 1A. Joan, are you able to see text number 1A on your screen?
Oops. It's really pretty tiny. Yeah, I could do it.
Are you able to zoom in? If you pinch the screen with your fingers, it should zoom in.
Yeah. It's a little zoom. Most Jews will immediately step forward when Jews anywhere are being attacked by anti-Semites. This is, of course, as it should be. What is regrettable, however, is that for some Jews, the fight against anti-Semitism becomes the sum total of their Jewish identity. Recently, a much respected Jewish communal leader lamented to me that he regretted not having educated his children about Jewish traditions and culture.
I want to pause you for just a moment, Joan. This is by Devorah Lipstadt, I believe her name is. She's just big in anti-Semitism. She wrote a few books. She, I believe, was one of the presidential teams. Brought her on board to be the head of the Coalition on Anti-Semitism, the United States. So she's big in this, and this is from her most recent book, published, I believe, in 2019. So just so we know who it is that we're talking about, please continue, Joan.
I was wondering. He was, however, very proud of the fact that he had embedded within them a total intolerance of anti-Semitism. His kids were prepared to be at the barricades to do battle against this hatred and many others as well. His comments made me sad. Anti-Semitism has become the drummer to which his family's Jewish identity marches. They know of Jew as object, not subject. In other words, what is done to Jews becomes far more significant than what Jews do. This well-intentioned Jewish father has deprived his children of a rich and multifaceted legacy. They have been taught to see themselves mainly as perennial victims. This cedes to the oppressor control over one's destiny and leaves many Jews, including this man's children, aware of what to be against, but not to be for.
Thank you, Joan. So it reminds me of a story. There was, I was thinking, because it's a very powerful point that she's making, that when your whole existence is negating others, who are you? The closest thing that came to mind was, it's a funny story anyways. There's this missionary and he comes knocking on the door. A man opens the door and is about to slam the door in his face, but the missionary knows it's not his first rodeo, right? He knows how to start speaking, and and convincing the guy that it's okay to let him in and what he wants to, like, you know, you have the 3 seconds to grab someone's attention. And then they start talking for a moment, and the homeowner is about to slam the door in this guy's face again. But the guy gets back at the adversary and uses another hook and gets and back and forth they're going. Anyways, eventually the homeowner says, okay, come on inside. Let me pour you a glass of water. Here's a piece of cake to eat. And we sit down by the table. And the homeowner says, okay, so what do you want to talk about? And the missionary says, well, you know what? I don't know. I never got this far. So you have a guy who he understands all the tactics of how to deal with the adversary of homeowners not letting you into their house, but he actually doesn't know what product he's selling. And we see that many people today, unfortunately, like this man, we are very intolerant of anti-Semites, but for many people, remembering the Holocaust has become the sum total of their Judaism. It's very important to remember the Holocaust, and it's very important to make sure that such things don't happen ever again, not to us and not to anyone else. But if we make that our identity, if we view our identity solely as the victims of anti-Semitism, and we don't know who we are, we end up left with nothing. Because our children that we're raising, what are we telling them? We are victims. Sign up for Judaism. We want you to be Jewish and to remember that you have a Jewish identity and not to stand for the hatred and all of the horrible things that are being done to Jewish people. And if that is Judaism, then which kid would want to sign up for that? It's a severe disservice to ourselves or to our kids. And let's look at text number 1b. Auntie Nina, if you'd like to read this one for us. Text number 1b by Barry Weiss at the Solidarity March in 2020. The audio is not coming through very clearly.
Number
Exactly.
5. Yes, no. The right page.
Page number 10, text 1b. Are you seeing that?
I have to get the text number
1b.
Oh, that's 1b. I thought, okay. On earth for the Jewish people were not put on earth. Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Well, the Jewish people were not put on earth to be anti-Semites. We were put on earth
Anti-Semites.
to be Jews. I'm all over the place, so I just have to concentrate on reading. Anyway, we were put on earth to be Jews. Is that all?
Yeah. The Jewish people were not put on earth to be anti-Semites. We were put on earth to be Jews. And I think that really sums it up.
Yes.
That really sums it up. So what are we? What are we? You know, what are we? Are we people who stand like who as a religion, as a Jewish people, are we people who are oppressed and stand up to oppression? Or do we have our own tradition, heritage, and legacy? Focusing on anti-Semitism keeps us as victims and does not allow us to thrive on our own. So the question that this leads us to is how can we be aware of everything that's going on without panicking? How can we stay in a mindset where we're positive and forward thinking about the future? How do we do that? If we look around and we look at all the people who are throughout the generations killing us, maiming us, and slandering against us, it's one thing to turn a blind eye, but that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to remain very much aware of what's going on and not be taken by it. And the question is how? How do we do that? So before we move on, there's a little hint, which is that thank God we live today where we live. We have 3,000 years of history full of anti-Semitism to learn from. So we're not the first players in this game, and we can look at the great minds who have lived before us, who have encountered anti-Semitism, and we could look at how they dealt with it. So we are, in a sense, lucky that this is a very beaten path, I guess, pun intended. And we can look at how the Jewish people have responded to the beatings and how they stayed positive. So to summarize where we've come so far, we started how anti-Semitism is something that is very relevant to us today. Anti-Semitism is not gone. We look around us and we see and we hear what's going on around us in the United States and in other countries. Also, the rabbi in Boston who was stabbed a few months back, if we remember that. It's all over the place. So this is something that is very relevant. We have discussed the danger of fear, and we are looking to focusing on who we are, to bring the ball back into our court so that we can be the owners of our destiny, the owners of our mindset. So how do we stay away from fear? That's going to be the next big topic that we're going to talk about now. The answer is that we are miraculous. We are a miracle. All the mighty emperors, the mighty empires who have trodden upon us now lay in the dust and have forgotten. Let's look at another excerpt from Deborah Lipstadt. Where are we? Share the screen. We're going to look at text number 3 over here. Scroll through here. Text number 3. Okay. Leib Moshe, would you like to read text number 3 for us?
What page is that?
That is going to be page number 14.
The fact that we're here is such a historical anomaly, it makes no sense. So sometimes when I'm asked about anti-Semitism, people will say, well, how can you be optimistic in all this? How can you see the positive? It's such a dreary situation. And I say, because we shouldn't be here. And the fact that we are here shouldn't be taken for granted.
Isn't that an interesting spin?
Yeah.
You have a person who's asking her, look at all the beatings you've received over the last 3,000 years. Every empire that rise tried to kill you. How are you optimistic for the future? And what's her answer? Her answer is that all those empires tried to kill us, but we are here and they're gone. And that's very optimistic because we have a good track record that no matter who is going to try to kill us, we'll still be here. It's like, I guess today's, and a big word in psychology is resilience. Resilience, resilience, resilience. And that's what it's about. Resilience is surviving the threat and moving past it. And I guess if they have now, and there's very fascinating, it's a fascinating area called intergenerational trauma, where trauma can be transferred from generation to generation. You can have people who have traumatic associations to things that they have never experienced. And it's the studies are there, and it's a fascinating, something that I personally find fascinating. But if you can have intergenerational trauma, you can have intergenerational resilience as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Why not?
So let's realize that the resilience that we've built up over the generations helps us in our fight today. So let's look back. Let's look back at a fascinating time in history, and let's learn something really interesting from Maimonides, from the Rambam. We've quoted him many times, especially in the last two courses. And let's talk about the year 1168. The year 1168 was a tough year for the Jews of Yemen. There was a lot going on for them, a three-pronged attack on Judaism. They were having it very hard. There was a clerical fanatic Muslim who had taken over the rule of Yemen. And he told the Jewish people that they have an ultimatum: either you convert to Islam or the end will be dire consequences. So everyone in Yemen, all the Jewish people, were being forced to convert or die practically. At the same time, there was an apostate Jew, a Jew who was very well learned and very charismatic, who had converted to Islam and was going around community to community trying to proselytize for the Islamists and trying to tell them how, according to Jewish texts, it's okay to convert to Islam. You had that problem as well. So you have the cleric who's telling them that if they're not going to convert, they're going to die. You have the apostate who's telling them that it's not so bad to convert to Islam. And then, to make everything even worse, there was some guy who had claimed himself as the Messiah, as the Mashiach, another false Mashiach, who had come and told everyone that he's Mashiach, the Mashiach has arrived, and so on and so forth. Everyone should follow him and do as he says. The Jewish people at that time were very stressed, were very pressured. They were scared for their lives. They weren't sure what to do, where to turn. They were just confused. And they wrote a letter to the Rambam, to Maimonides. They turned to their great leader, who turned to the Rambam, to Maimonides. And they asked him, what do we do? How do we calm down the people? How do we lead the people on the proper path? What are we supposed to do with all of this? And so let's look at text number 4 from the Rambam. Malki, is that you?
Yes, hi, good evening.
Okay, if I pull up text number 4 on the screen, would you like to read it for us? Are you able to see that? Hashem assured our father Jacob?
Yeah, but it's cut. Okay.
You start with the first part and we'll
God
scroll
assured
down.
our father Jacob early on that although the nations would enslave his descendants, treat them cruelly, and subjugate them, his children would survive and endure, whereas those who enslave them would eventually disappear. God told him in Genesis and Bereshit, your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. Although they are destined to be trampled and downtrodden, as everyone tramples the dust of the earth, they will overcome and triumph in the end, just as, to continue the analogy, the dust eventually rises over those who trampled upon them when their corpses are buried. So Israel will remain in existence, whereas those who have trodden upon them will not. The Creator.
So I want to pause you for just a second over there to elaborate on this analogy. So what is he saying is that the dust, right? We all walk all over the dust. We all step on the dust and trample on the dust. But at the end of the day, who has the last laugh? It's the dust. When we buried 6 feet under, the dust is covering us over. So too, all of these nations that are rising up to trample upon us, at the end of the day, they will be gone and we will be here. I mean, who's wearing togas? Imagine Julius Caesar woke up in Rome today. And let's imagine this. Julius Caesar wakes up in Rome and looks around. This has changed a little bit. The people aren't dressed nearly the same. They don't speak the same language. They're not eating the same foods. They're not, many of them, I would posit, I haven't even heard of him or don't even know what he wrote. Conversely, lahavdil, let's say Moses woke up in Jerusalem today. He would walk to the Kotel, he would walk to the Wailing Wall, and he'd see people wrapping themselves in the same talis that he did, putting on tefillin the same way that he did. He'd say Shalom Aleichem, and we'd say Aleichem Shalom. We'd invite him over to the Shabbos meal for some gefilte, maybe gefilte fish they didn't have back then, but it's all the same prayers, the same rituals, everything going on the same. So those people who tried to destroy us, this is the first point that Maimonides, the Rambam, is telling these people, that there are enemies rising up against you. Know that ultimately we will prevail. We will continue. We will be here, and they will be gone. Malki, would you like to finish the rest?
Sure. The Creator similarly assured us through his prophets that we will never be destroyed, that he will never permit our annihilation, and that we will never stray from being a nation devoted to its purpose. Just as it is impossible for God's own existence to be nullified, so is it impossible that we should be destroyed and eliminated from the world. So spoke Malachi, I am God and I have not changed, and you, the children of Yaakov, have not been destroyed.
Thank you, Malki. So let me ask you, did the Rambam tell them and explain to them what they should do? Did he solve their problem?
No,
He didn't. What did he do?
he gave them a longer view of things. In the long
He gave them a
run.
larger view, and he told them not to be afraid. He said, "You'll figure out what's best for you. You'll get rid of this issue. You'll pass it. But no, just know that this crazy Muslim cleric will die. This apostate will die, and the false Messiah will die, and the Jewish people will live forever."
But if you are the person who's being threatened with death or conversion, it doesn't bring much comfort.
So that's a very good question. We're going to get to that soon. It's a very good question. But one thing to know is that we as a whole are not going anywhere. They can threaten us with conversion. They can threaten us with annihilation. They can threaten us with whatever they want. They will not get their way.
Please God.
They will not get their way. So says God. So there's two meditations that we want to talk about to wrap up this part of the class tonight, which is meditation number one, to think about dealing with fear, is that the Jewish existence is miraculous. Nations come and go, but God is forever and we are forever. Meditation number two is a little more personal, and this I love this analogy. If you ever watch National Geographic, let's take for example the buffalo, right? They need to get from one place to another because there's no more food left. So they have to go through the ocean, and it's a fact that some of them are going to drown. But the buffalo need to continue, the buffalo need to exist, and everyone's going to die if they're not going to go through the river, so they go through the river, and some of them die, some of them drown. In Judaism, we don't believe that we are like buffalo. We believe that every single person is important. Not only the Jewish people as a whole, every single person is important. So Leib Moshe is asking a very good question. Okay, us as a Jewish people will never be destroyed. We will always be here. But what about myself? So here's meditation number two. It's a little more personal. Hashem is with me through all of my challenges. Hashem is with me and cares about me personally through every challenge of mine. So I'm going to ask you a question about this, actually. Who knows what is the most common two-word phrase in the entire Bible, in the whole Tanakh, all 24 books of scriptures?
Harai Gewalt.
Baruch Hashem.
Who knows? Who knows what is the most common two-word phrase in the whole Tanakh?
Al Tira.
Very good. Masha knows. Al Tira, fear not. And you know how many times it appears in Tanakh? 44 times. Al tira, fear not. Again and again and again, Hashem is telling us. 44 times, fear not. And let's look at King David. King David had a fair share of sorrows in his life. And look what he wrote over here in Psalm 23. Many of us are familiar with this. Share screen. Back over here. Where are we?
The Lord's my shepherd. In English.
See if I can pull this up. Here. Masha, would you like to read text number 6 for us?
No, it's okay. I'm busy with something. I'm listening. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Chana or Simcha, would you like to jump in with text number 6? Okay, text number 6 is from King David, a song of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. He allows me to lay down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Even if I walk in the valley of death's shadow, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So, King David started out as a shepherd. He knows what it's like to be a good shepherd. A good shepherd doesn't count the sheep in the morning, take them out to pasture, and count them again at night. A good shepherd cares for every one of his sheep, and we know King David himself from his own life. When a sheep was hurt, when a sheep was sick, he took care of it. We know that he took heed, and he noticed that the sheep were not all, the young sheep and the old sheep were not eating well. So he built pens for the young sheep, the old sheep, and the middle sheep. And he would first let out the young sheep to graze so that they could have the soft top part of the grass. Then he would put them back in the pen and let out the old sheep so that they could eat the crunchier middle part of the grass. And then they would go back to their pen, and then he would let out the strong sheep who would crunch up the bottom, the roots that they were able to. And this way everyone was fed. A real shepherd tends to each and every sheep on their own level. And that's what King David is saying. He had a life with many troubles, but what got him through it? His belief and trust that God is with me wherever I go. Through every challenge of mine, Hashem is here with me. God cares about me personally. And he's here with me in every challenge. So what we've spoken about so far is who benefits when we are stuck in victimhood? No one. And how can we help ourselves feel strong? There's 2 points to it. There's the miracle of Jewish existence, knowing that we are not going anywhere. And there's the knowledge that Hashem goes with me. And if we look in closer history, Natan Sharansky, I believe was his name, famous refusenik. He was interviewed, and he said that one of the things that helped him most as he stood up to the government was Psalm 23. It's a lot easier to be afraid and to run away and to hide. It takes courage and fortitude to stand up and say, God is my shepherd. God is here with me. I trust in him. I have not only belief, but I have trust that everything will work out well because he cares about me. And he knows what's best for me, and he will lead me to the right decisions and the right choices. And Natan shares that is what got him through the hard times in prison, standing up to the Russian government. So outsmarting starts with moving from fear to strength. Now, how can we start dealing with it? But before then, there is one more text that I want to share with us, which is what we start the Havdalah with. Indeed, God is my deliverance. I am confident and I shall not fear. For God is my strength and my praise, and he has been my salvation. And this is what we say every Saturday night as we leave the serenity of Shabbos and head back into the mundane of the week. We remind ourselves that no matter where we go, no matter what we do, no matter what finds us, and no matter what we find, Hashem is with us. Hashem is my salvation, I shall not fear. So far, to recap, we have discussed that fear is debilitating. And in order to be in a good mindset, a healthy mindset, a strong mindset, we have to first eliminate the fear. If we're responding out of fear, we're not going to get too far. How do we deal with our fear? Number one, know that we are not going anywhere. No matter what they do, what schemes they try to plan against us, will fail. We are here forever. And number two, that God cares about me and God is here with me. Hashem is here with me. And now comes the next question, the final point that we're going to talk about tonight. How do we balance the need to act? Is it enough? Just, and Leib Moshe is going to appreciate this question. So we're trusting in God. We're trusting in Hashem. Everything is going to be fine. Hashem promised us that we're not going anywhere. So now, is there anything that we have to do? Let's just lay back and trust in God and it'll all be fine. How do we balance the need to act? How do we balance our trust in God with the need to get out there and lobby and do the right things that need to be done to make sure that, to ensure our survival? Let's look back to the story of Esther. There was an anti-Semite, and his name was Haman. All the Jews at that time, all the Jews, no matter where in the world you lived, you were under Persian Empire. The king of the Persian Empire was Achashverosh, and he had a wicked advisor named Haman. And Haman did not like the Jewish people. He wanted to annihilate all the Jewish people, men, women, children, young and old. And he came to the king, and he knew that, you don't just come to the king and say, hey, can I kill all the Jews? So he said, hey, I'll give you $500,000 if you let me kill the Jews. And the king said, keep the money and do as you wish. And a decree was written up for all of the Persians to raise arms against the Jews on a specific day and to kill and to systematically wipe out every Jew who lives on the face of the earth. We also remember that the king's wife's name was Esther, who was a cousin of Mordechai, who was one of the greatest rabbis. Now, Mordechai found out about the plot. And he called Esther and he said, Esther, you got to speak to your husband. The time has come. You cannot lay low anymore. You've hidden from him that you were Jewish, but at this point in time, you got to speak up. Now, let me ask you, if you were Esther, what would you do to prepare for that meeting?
Wear something sexy.
You would get pretty. You would make sure that you had his favorite meal and his favorite drink ready. Right?
Right.
Exactly. That is what you would have done if you were Esther. Thank you, Joan. Now, let's look at what Esther did. Text number 10. Share screen. Where are we? Here. Text number 10. Leib Moshe, can you read text number 10 for us, please?
Okay. Esther dictated a message to be sent back to Mordechai. Go and assemble all the Jews who live in Shushan. Let them fast on my behalf. Let them neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night and day. I and my maidens will fast likewise, and then I shall go to the king, although it is contrary to the law, and if I am to perish, I shall perish.
Thank you, Leib Moshe. Esther said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to fast for 3 days. It's against the law. I mean, the queen doesn't go to the king. The king calls the queen. And anybody who comes to the king without permission gets killed. We're all going to fast for 3 days. And at the end of that, it wasn't like no luxuries. It wasn't no going to restaurants. It was no food and no drink for 3 days. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, Yom Kippur is 1 day and that's enough. Could you imagine? Let's imagine when you were Leib Moshe, when you were in sales, right? Imagine you had a $700,000 business deal. Would you book it and set it up for Yom Kippur evening, right before you break your fast after 24 hours of fasting?
No.
I like that emphatic no. I mean, after 3 days, you could just imagine what she would be like after 3 days of not eating it and drinking. That seems quite contrary.
May I finish the
Oh, I stopped you in the middle.
Yes.
I apologize. It moves on to the next
Mordecai
page.
went ahead and implemented all that Esther had commanded him. On the third day, Esther donned her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's palace.
And here we have a beautiful picture depicting that. Thank you, Leib Moshe. That's what she did. So, to understand her approach, and to understand, let's move back a little bit further generally. The Jewish belief in business. The balance between these two ideas. That on the one hand, everything that we have comes from God, and on the other hand, everything that we have to work for. So, is it from Hashem or is it from us? On the one hand, Esther went to the king. She didn't just rely on God, she went to the king. On the other hand, she didn't dress up and cook up a feast. She sat and fasted for 3 days first. Same thing with us. We know that God is going to give us a livelihood. God is going to give us everything we need. But we go to work. So what's going on? Are we supposed to be working? Does our money come from our work? Does our money come from God? Are we supposed to trust in God? If we're supposed to trust in God, then why do we need to work? And if we need to work, then why do we need to trust in God? How does that fit together? So let's look at text number 11. It's a long text. I'll read it. This is from the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. He is known as the Tzemach Tzedek, and he writes like this. This is based on Kabbalistic teachings, and it's expounded upon fairly often in Chabad Hasidic philosophy. And here's what he writes. Everything that comes into being in this material world must materialize through natural means. Nature, however, is simply a garment. Meaning, God's energy bringing things into existence must be dressed, concealed, and obscured to the point that an observer sees only a world that appears to run naturally. In truth, however, everything emerges directly from God himself. He obscures the divine bestowals until the miraculous and supernal reality of material existence is not observable, and material developments seem perfectly natural. When, for example, God provides an individual with an ample livelihood, it is not done through miracles as it was in the Sinai desert, when God rained manna and meat from the skies. Rather, God sends the blessing through the individual's business affairs. The gains reaped through commerce appear so natural that the individual can be fooled into thinking along the lines of, it is my strength that generated this wealth. And it is my wisdom that led to my success. For I am well versed in commerce, I know what to buy and the most prudent times to sell. Now, this arrangement works so long as we prepare a valid garment through which the divine flow of sustenance can descend into material reality. Our occupation must be proportionate, so that according to the rules of nature, the sum required for our livelihood could theoretically be gained via such an occupation. If this requirement is met, our occupation serves as a perfect garment in which God can disguise his blessing. For we could easily claim, I acquired this wealth through my own skills, because it is indeed considered natural for such an occupation to yield that range of profit. Since such an assertion is logically sound, our occupation is an appropriate conduit for God's kindness. Accordingly, while we work, and here's the important part, We should be mindful of our belief that our earnings are God's blessing. They are like any other open miracle, like the miracle of the manna. Our actions merely weave a garment behind which God can disguise his blessing. One should apply the same concept to all other areas of life. Pursue your needs in accordance with your understanding, with the intention of forging an appropriate garment through which God will send his blessing. God will then act as he sees fit, providing the truest form of good that is appropriate for you. So is it Hashem or is it us?
Both.
The answer is yes. It is Hashem and it is us. It is his blessing and it is our work. We have to go out there and get a job. We have to remember that it's not us that brings in wealth, it's God that brings in wealth. And the story of our business is the story of life and the story of Jewish survival. Esther needed a blessing. So what did she needed to do? She needed to speak to the king and tell him, enough is enough, get rid of Haman and get rid of the decree. But where did the blessing come from? She remembered that the source of the blessing is from God, not from Achashverosh. From God, not from the king. The whole issue started when they put too much trust into the king, but that's a story. I don't think we'll have enough time for that. So if you need a blessing, the first thing you do is pray. Plug into the source. Get connected. And then get to work. Action. We have to remember what is primary and what is secondary. Primary is plugging into the source and connecting with the source of the blessings. Secondary is getting to work. So here's the lesson for us. Here's the lesson, the takeaway for us for tonight. Number one is don't be afraid, because you will be here to see the end of everything. And number two, when it's time to act, don't forget the source. Here's a story. I will share the video of this in the recap email. Those of you who are not signed up for the course, you can send a message via however you got this link, and I can send you the video as well. It's a video of the Rebbe talking. The date was April 23rd, 1990. And the, I forget his name. You know what? I have it written down over here. Give me just a second. Here. Mr. Eliakim Rubinstein was an aide to Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. He called the Rebbe. He called the Rebbe's office and told Rabbi Binyamin Klein, who was the Rebbe's secretary, who was the one who dealt with Israel pretty much. He was the secretary who had the relations between Israel and the Rebbe. And this Mr. Rubinstein told Rabbi Klein to relay a message to the Rebbe that the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, had sent a message to all of their proxies in the globally to attack Jewish sites. And this was a big threat, a very big threat. And he told Rabbi Klein to give the message over to the Rebbe immediately. So this was right before Mincha, right before the afternoon prayers. The Rebbe came out for afternoon prayers as usual. And to everyone's shock, nobody knew about what was going on. All of a sudden, after Mincha, the Rebbe starts to talk. They bring a microphone, and the Rebbe starts to talk to the crowd who are there. And this is what he said. Text number 13. Share screen. Let's read this inside. Where are we? Text 12. Text 13. And the Rebbe said, about an hour ago, I received word that the PLO commanded all of its international chapters to strike Jewish enemies and inflict bodily harm and much more. May it never come to be. We will not elaborate on such negative things. It is therefore necessary to underscore God's abundant blessings to all Jews in all places, for all that they need, with an attitude of happiness and authentic trust. Special emphasis should be placed on the well-known directive, think good and it will be good. Positive thoughts lead to positive outcomes. It is also appropriate to utilize this information, not to frighten, God forbid, but with a happy attitude, thinking positively to add in more in matters of Torah and mitzvot. So here we have, very recently, a direct threat on Jews globally. And what was the Rebbe's response? We have to act, and we have to remember, where do our blessings come from? Don't be afraid, trust in Hashem, and don't forget the source. So that is tonight's topic. What we've discussed is, number one, why the topic anti-Semitism is relevant to us today. Number two, fear is debilitating. Let's focus on the miracle of Jewish survival. And let's focus on God's care personally to each and every one of us. And let us remember that when it's time to take action, let us first plug into our source and remember where it is that we're coming from. Thank you all for joining. And before we leave, we will do our usual round of sharing a nugget, something that you learned today, something that you took out of this. I personally found the Devar Lipstadt, that first text that we read about not allowing anti-Semitism to define who we are, was very powerful to me. That's something that I really appreciated. Joan, what are you taking away from tonight's course?
Don't be afraid. Remember, God is always with me.
God is always with you. Beautiful. Thank you. Leib Moshe, what are you taking away from today?
Well, I was very impressed by the same thing that you had mentioned about in the very beginning. What you had
Thank you.
mentioned. Yeah. You know,
Auntie Nina.
to me, just to finish up, I'm sorry. To me, it's changing my way of looking at how to deal with anti-Semitism, and that's the biggest impression it's made on me.
Very good. Very good. Auntie Nina.
Well, I need to make more effort to live with faith, not belief. We believe in Hashem, but the real faith, not just a minute, bitachon, real faith. Listen, what are you scared of? Hashem's with me, I shall not fear. I just want to grow in that, because I don't just want to be saying it to you now, but I wanted to say it, to internalize it. And thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Malki, was there something that you enjoyed or that you're taking away from tonight's class?
Yes, I very much enjoyed. I wasn't able to be there for the beginning, but now that the kids are asleep. So thanks for sharing it. I did like the analogy of the dust that I've heard many times, but not that it's flip-sided, as in like, yeah, the dust in itself also rises above. It's not only stepped on. So I always heard, like, you know, the dust of the earth is the bottom, and then we'll also compare to the stars in the sky. So, you know, the two aspects, but like the dust itself has that ability to rise over.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Excuse me, was that?
Yes.
Excuse me, please. Was that Malki from?
From Brazil.
Yeah. Hello, Auntie Nina.
Oh,
Hello,
darling.
hello.
Sorry, everyone, but I just saw the surname, but it has to be you, darling.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, we'll go on.
Thank you.
Love you.
And
Nice to be
Masha,
together.
was there something that you would like to share?
Yeah, sure. First, the Rebbe's emphasis again, you know, he was told basically that, you know, basically his answer is, we are in Hashem's army, and this is what we do. This is, and the way to fight is with Torah and mitzvahs. And so I'm just like to stress that again, that's the battle. And some people talk, so that's the main, that's the main battle. That's how we fight. And then the other idea, which is to connect to the source, that I really need to remember that every time, like when I'm about to do something, just to ask Hashem to be with me and, to be with me, to give me the strength and to guide me to do the right thing before I do something. And I should connect more often and ask for that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. Yes, Joan.
Psalm 23 came more alive to me. It was more understandable. It had more meaning based upon tonight.
Beautiful.
Oh, Joan, it's lovely to see you again.
Oh, I wish I could see you. Well, you have no image on here. It's wonderful to hear your voice. I love hearing your voice.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry, everyone, but it's so nice to see everybody again. And it gives me, it helps me with my bitachon, with my face, seeing you coming back and, being part of this group.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's
everybody
heartwarming.
there.
Yes.
Yes,
Good.
I didn't want to interrupt too much, but all the gentlemen too, and the ladies and everyone I know from before and other family. We're, how Mashiach, this is, we're all united. It's all everything. Hashem has set everything up for us to be completely united. It's here. Okay.
Beautiful.
Yes, you
Thank
too,
you. Thank you,
Marsha.
everyone, for joining. And are there any other questions before we sign off for tonight?
How come
Okay.
how come you weren't recording?
So it's recording. The way I record it, I do it live on YouTube. That way it's easier for me to record, and then I post the recording
Okay.
after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Rabbi.
You are very welcome. Take care, and we will see you next week, same time, same place.
Ezra Hashem. Ezra
Thank
Hashem.
Ezra
Yes.
Hashem.
Oh,
Baruch
welcome,
Hashem.
Joan. I'm going to. Here I am, Joan. Hi.
Oh, good to see you. Oh,
A little bit worse for wear, but never mind. And I'm frozen on the screen. The screen
yes.
keeps freezing. That's why all right. Never mind. I'm waiting, but you can't see, I guess. Bye.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you all, everyone. Have a good night. Auntie Nina, have a good morning. And
Thank you.
Rabbi, I just have a quick question. Are all the classes that we've done, the different courses, are they all on YouTube?
I believe so.
How would I look that up? Under your name or under Jewish Learning Institute?
So I think that it's unlisted. I'm gonna have to make them private, public. If you could send me a text message, and Be'ezras Hashem, with God's help, I'll be able to do that tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jonah, it was very nice to see you again.
you too. Very nice. Yes.
Okay, take care. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.